Hi guys, and welcome to a sunny November Sunday morning on the Isle of Man. What better thing to do than to get the convertible out? Yep, you can still drive a convertible here in November, as long as you crank the heating up to max. Well, what better thing to do than to put the roof down, drive around and record a quick fun video about a few typical Manx things that you will come across when you visit the Isle of Man or when you move here. So let's start with number one, and that is of course the Manx accent. And I don't mean the language. Of course, Manx Gaelic is its own language. No, I mean the Manx accent, which you will come across a lot when you come over here. Now, I'm not even going to try and pretend that I can do a good Manx accent, despite having been here 20 years now, 22 years actually, on and off. I've only just about managed to lose my German accent, so there's no way that I can ever do a satisfactory Manx accent in any way, shape or form. Instead, I would like to direct your attention to this wonderful video by June McGuinness and his friends that I recorded a few years ago, which brilliantly explains the Manx accent and all its most important phrases to you.
Hey boy!
Hello, person I know.
Hey boy!
Hello, person I don't know.
Right there, Yessir?
I've forgotten your name.
I'm also going to link to it below, so yeah, check that out. It's the best video probably ever done on explaining what the Manx accent is about. Number two are a few key phrases that you will hear when you're over here. Now they kind of tie into the accent, I guess, but I wanted to mention them separately. And I think it's worth pointing out at least three key phrases. Number one is of course "Trai de lur," Manx Gaelic for time enough. It's more than a phrase, it's more than a saying. Of course you can say that when you just can't be bothered doing something, but really it's more of a slogan for the whole island, and it stands for the fact that, you know, we have time enough to do things, we don't stress ourselves. Meaning the pace of life here is a bit slower. So "Trai de lur," you're going to see that a lot, you're going to hear that a lot. It's a motto, it's a lifestyle. Number two, of course, is probably the second most used phrase or word over here, and that is "there's a boat in the morning." What does that mean? That means if you dare to criticize the Isle of Man in any way, shape or form, then someone somewhere will always politely point out to you that if you don't like it, there's a boat in the morning, to which you usually reply if you're lucky, or it's overpriced, or I can't afford it. So yeah, basically criticizing the Isle of Man always brings that sentence as response, sometimes humorous, sometimes serious. But be prepared that if you say something against the Isle of Man, you will be told there's a boat in the morning. The other term you get is "he's as Manx as the hills," or "she's as Manx as the hills." That means to be really properly Manx, I think you have to go back at least 3, 4, 5 generations, otherwise you will not be Manx. You will be, the next two terms that I tell you, you will either be a come-over, and that is anyone, depending who you ask on the definition, anyone who just moved here or has been here for less than 5 or less than 10 years. Then we call you a come-over. If you've been here for more than 5 or 10 years, again, depending on who you ask, then you will become a stopover. But you can never be as Manx as the hills, because your family over here, or you, don't go back generations. And some other sayings and phrases that you will hear is when it's raining, people might say the fairies are doing their washing, or when fog comes down, then we call that Manannan's Cloak. Of course, you do know that the Isle of Man is not named after man, or man or mankind or something like that. It's named after Manannan the mythical god. And whenever there's fog here, then we refer to it as Manannan's Cloak, covering the island or hiding the island from its enemies. So every time it's foggy, and when you hear someone say it's Manannan's Cloak, that's where it comes from. Other key things you will hear is, these days probably mostly humorous. You can't go to Ramsey at this time of night. That usually means, it's way too far to go anywhere in the evening. Now, nothing on the Isle of Man is far. You can drive from one end to the other in less than an hour. But of course, if you're in Douglas and it's already late, you can't go to Ramsey at this time of night. Make sure you have a shovel and a flask and a blanket in the boot. So all these kind of things, you will hear, some sort of localized phrases and things. The next thing that is typically Manx is, of course, the fairies, superstitions, and the world famous Fairy Bridge. Now that one is on the way to the airport, at least the tourist you want. There is also the real Fairy Bridge, which I mentioned in a different video. So there's different ones. Whichever one you believe is the real one shall be the real one for you. It really doesn't matter. But people people like the superstitions here, and I like it too. It's something very cute, it's something very traditional. And the tradition is, of course, when you pass Ferry Bridge, you have to greet the fairies, otherwise it's bad luck. And you will actually see people still doing that. Now, there's a really old BBC clip, I'll see if I find it, I'll link to it below, where they first reported out about this in the, I think, 50s, 60s or something. You know, one of these really old path clips, I'll link to it, it's really cute. Where they try this out, you know, they go to the airport and they go to Ferry Bridge and they see if people actually greet them, and pretty much every car that goes by greets the fairies. And that still kind of happens today. Most people, especially locals, do greet the fairies when they cross the bridge. They may not wave anymore, but many still wave or just say hi fairies. And even if you take the bus and go past there, there's a special announcement on the bus as you pass the bridge, pointing it out to passengers that you're supposed to greet them, and then it says hi fairies. So we like these superstitions, and of course the Ferry Bridge is also a bit of a place of pilgrimage for TT fans and for visitors, and you always get a lot of pictures and cards, and you know, remembering loved ones and people you lost and people who loved the TT. So you see that a lot remembered there. At the one going to the airports, at the touristy Ferry Bridge, I call it, okay. And you also see that at the real Ferry Bridge. You see, you know, candles there. You see people coming there, you know, thinking about people, and it's a sort of it's a little spiritual, I suppose. And we need places like that, and we like places like that. So yeah, the next really very typical Manx thing is, of course, the Ferry Bridge and the fairies. Now, if you want to be nice to the fairies, you leave milk and cookies outside your door at night, and it will be gone in the morning. If that's the fairies or the neighbor's cat, I'll leave it up to you. Let's just say it's the fairies. The fourth thing that you really need to check out when you come over here is what we lovingly call the Moanin Line. And that is actually the Mannin Line on Manxradio. It's a daily phone-in, write-in talk show, interactive talk show that goes from, I think it's from 12 to 1 p.m. every single day during the week. Has been on for absolutely ever. And yeah, you can already see why we call it the Moanin Line, because that's what it is. People phone up and complain about all sorts of things. Very often it's the same people. So you will hear the presenter not even saying, "Oh, what's your name?" He's just going to say, "Oh, George, it's you again. Oh, yo, what's it this year?" And yeah, it's a national institution in the same way that Manxradio is. So if you really want to get a very good idea of how the island ticks, then do check out Manxradio. It's the national broadcaster. It is subsidized by the government. It's being much criticized by people for receiving, I think, like about $1 million a year in subsidies. And the reason they do need that money is because they are a community radio station. They're a national broadcaster. And the type of program that they put out would not be commercially viable. They do things like the Manx language program. They do, I don't know, a report from the Manx farmers market and community things. All very important programs when it comes to keeping the Manx identity alive and furthering Manx culture and heritage and doing things that are important for the community. But none of these programs are commercially viable, which is why they get money. And I will always defend Manxradio for doing that, because it's very, very important. It's just simply part of what makes the Isle of Man the Isle of Man. Otherwise, it would just be another canned radio station. So do check out Manxradio for all their sort of local programs if you want to get a better feel for the place. They have plenty of very localized, very community-focused programs. Gives you a good idea of what's here, what's going on, and you know how the place ticks. But yeah, if you really want to see what the hot problems of the day are, then you must tune in to the Moanin Line every weekday from 12 till 1. And listen to, you know, what's really the problems that we are fighting with. And I assure you, mostly it's nothing big. Of course, the Isle of Man does have problems. I pointed it out in a recent video that I got flack for and told there's a boat in the morning, more than once. But yeah, the problems are, you know, relatively minor compared to other places and in the great scheme of things. So yeah, my fourth thing to tell you really is, if you want to know how the place ticks, check out Manxradio and especially tune into the Moanin Line. You're going to love it. The fifth and last thing for today is another thing you will come across on the Isle of Man a lot. And that is the Mexican standoff. Or maybe I should call it Mexican standoff. Let me explain. We have a lot of roundabouts on the Isle of Man. They love roundabouts here. Roundabouts are a good thing. They're a very, very good way to keep traffic flowing, because traffic lights mean you have to slow down, speed up again. Roundabouts means you can just proceed if you follow the rules of the road. The problem is we don't always like to proceed with the rules of the road. And what you get, and you will come across this every single day of your life that you drive here, at least once, but usually probably more often is, let's say you're at a roundabout and there's multiple cars approaching the roundabout at the same time, and you all end up stopped at the roundabout and you're having a proper Mexican standoff. Because everyone here is terribly polite. So you're going to end up sitting at the roundabout and going, after you, no, after you, after you, after you, after you. And then, you know, if nobody makes the first move, you're still going to be there tomorrow. So expect Mexican standoffs at roundabouts. We are legendary for that. The best way to treat roundabouts over here is basically just go. That's what most visitors do. If you're used to driving in bigger cities, you're just going to go. But do be prepared for some proper Mexican standoffs when you drive here.